It began, as most extraordinary things do, in a moment of quiet defiancy, a decision to ask questions no one else dared to ask. I, Napoleon Hill, having spent years wrestling with the ideas of fear, habit, and drifting, finally reached a crossroads. If I truly wanted to understand why so many lives are shaped by unseen forces, why dreams fade into routine, why ambition so often dissolves into resignation, I would have to seek answers at the source. That's how I found myself, not in a boardroom or library, but in a mental chamber of my own, preparing to interrogate the one entity behind every excuse, every whisper of doubt, every human limitation, the devil himself. Of course, this was no ordinary conversation. The devil, as I envisioned him, was not some red-skinned villain with horns and a pitchfork, but the personification of every fear, bad habit, and corrosive belief that kept people trapped. I did not expect him to appear in flesh and blood. Instead, he manifested as a voice, a sly, confident, almost amused presence in my own mind. It was as if, the moment I committed to exposing the truth behind failure, the shadow itself became willing to speak. The interview began with skepticism on both sides. I, armed with my questions, determined not to be intimidated by myth or superstition. The devil, for his part, seemed delighted at the prospect of being given a stage. He had been working for ages, he boasted, shaping the course of history, not with grand gestures, but with the subtle tools of distraction, confusion, and inertia. You want to know my secrets? He teased. Ask anything, but be prepared for answers that will challenge everything you believe about yourself and the world. My first task was to define the terms. Who are you? I demanded, refusing to settle for easy metaphors or evasions. The devil's reply was chilling in its simplicity. I am the negative side of every human thought, the shadow cast by every ambition, the seed of fear planted in every mind. He claimed to have no physical form, no single address, only a vast network of influence woven through habit, tradition, and the many comforts of the status quo. His voice was never forced. He preferred the gentle nudge, the plausible excuse, the well-timed doubt. As the conversation unfolded, the devil made a bold claim. Most people are not beaten by hardship or opposition, but by drifting, living without clear intention, purpose, or direction. Give me a man or woman who drifts, and I will mold their destiny, he declared. They need not worship me nor believe in me. They need only move through life on autopilot, letting circumstances and fears make their choices. It was an admission more terrifying than any talk of hellfire or damnation. I pressed for specifics. How exactly do you exert your influence? The devil's answers were both dazzling and disturbing. He spoke of the ways he infiltrates education, uses idle entertainment, amplifies anxiety, and rewards conformity. He takes root in minds that are never taught to think independently, that shy away from discomfort, that accept the path of least resistance as fate. My methods are simple, he said. I offer comfort in exchange for surrender, certainty in exchange for curiosity, and security in exchange for growth. The more he explained, the more I realized how easy it is to fall under his sway, not because of malice or weakness, but because the systems of life are built to encourage drifting. Schools reward memorization over imagination. Society applauds obedience more than originality. Even families, with the best intentions, pass down anxieties disguised as wisdom. The devil revealed that he does not force, he invites, seduces, and patiently waits for people to choose ease over effort, and then he tightens the grip bit by bit. As our interview began, I felt both alarm and clarity. I understood that the real enemy was not some distant force, but the habits of mind and heart that allowed fear and inertia to set the rules. To outwit the devil, I would have to keep asking, keep challenging, keep digging for the root of every limitation. And as you listen to this interview, I invite you to do the same. Because this conversation, strange as it may be just, might reveal the chains you never realized you were wearing. As the interview deepened, I became acutely aware of how easily the devil manipulates the landscape of human life. Your greatest weapon is not violence or chaos, I challenged. It is subtlety working quietly, unseen, using the ordinary as your camouflage. The devil, amused, confirmed this. He described himself not as a mythic tempter, but as the master of invisible levers nudging people toward routines that look harmless, distractions that seem deserved, and beliefs that are so common they pass as common sense. He revealed that drifting is his chief tool and explained the difference between drifters and non-drifters. Non-drifters, he said, are rare. They are the few who chart their own course, think independently, and refuse to surrender their choices to circumstance or fear. Drifters, by contrast, are the many those who let life happen to them, who adapt to their environment without ever questioning who built it or why. Drifters are my playthings, the devil confessed. They hand me their minds on a silver platter, all the while convinced they are simply being realistic. I pressed him, "Why are drifters so common?" He replied that society itself is structured to breed them. Schools reward compliance over curiosity. Parents, worried for their children's futures, pass on their own insecurities, cloaked as practical advice. Workplaces demand obedience to routine, rarely encouraging genuine thought or innovation. Even recreation becomes a form of passive consumption, filling the silence where questions might otherwise arise. The devil spoke with pride of his influence over those who seek constant comfort. Give a man enough distractions, and he'll never ask the hard questions. Fill his days with noise, and he'll stop hearing the quiet voice of purpose inside himself. He claimed that the surest way to keep a person drifting is to keep them busy working, busy worrying, busy chasing the approval of others. The rhythm of life, he argued, can become a lullaby that puts entire generations to sleep. Curious about how he targeted his victims, I asked the devil to describe the early warning signs of drifting. He answered with a chilling clarity. "It starts with small surrenders," he said. A dream postponed for the sake of convenience, a question silenced to avoid discomfort, a goal abandoned because it was mocked by others. Over time, these small choices accumulate, forming habits that are invisible but unbreakable. Drifters, he explained, rarely recognize that they have handed over control of their lives. They call it growing up, being sensible, or just the way things are. But what about those rare souls who resist? The devil acknowledged that non-drifters are his greatest frustration. They are often misunderstood, sometimes ridiculed, but they possess an inner fire that no setback or criticism can extinguish. They make conscious decisions, set intentions, and live according to their own values. The devil's voice loses its power in their presence, for they are awake to the world and alive to possibility. Our conversation took a sharper turn as I asked the devil to reveal his favorite strategies for turning potential into passivity. He spoke of the seductive power of fear, how he amplifies worries until courage seems foolish, how he turns failure into shame rather than a lesson, how he uses the authority of experts and tradition to make questioning feel dangerous. Fear, he said, is the key that opens every door I wish to lock. As the interview continued, I felt a mix of outrage and awe. The devil's candor was as unsettling as his reach was vast. But with every answer, I sensed a growing confidence, a belief that, by naming these forces, by understanding their methods, I could begin to outwit them. You, too, are invited to listen closely, to notice where drifting may have crept into your life, and to ask yourself, where have I surrendered little by little without even noticing? This strange interview was just beginning, and its revelations would soon leave no life or mind untouched. With the groundwork laid, I decided to probe deeper, determined to expose the full arsenal of the devil's influence. You say that fear is your greatest tool, but where exactly do you plant it? What are your favorite types of fear to use on humankind? The devil, never one to hide his pride, was quick to answer. I work with a palette of fears: fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, and the ultimate fear of death. Nearly every self-imposed limitation can be traced back to one of these roots. He explained that fear is rarely a dramatic presence. It is a quiet, steady pressure anxiety over money that clouds judgment, a hesitation to speak up lest someone disapproves, a reluctance to try something new for fear of failure. Even as society evolves, these ancient fears remain, dressed in new language, but wielding the same paralyzing power. Let me into a person's mind through one of these doors, the devil said, and I can influence every decision they make, usually without them ever realizing it. I pressed for specifics. What about the systems people, trust schools, churches, governments? Do you use them in your work? The devil's laughter echoed like a challenge. Of course. Systems designed for order are easily turned to my purposes when people stop questioning them. If a child learns to memorize, but not to think, to obey, but not to doubt, to fit in, but not to stand out, then I have already won before they reach adulthood. Even faith, when corrupted by fear or dogma, can be used to make people smaller, more anxious, less free. He confessed to loving conformity above all. There is nothing more useful to me than a person desperate to belong. The desire for acceptance is so powerful that it can silence genius, kill creativity, and keep generations drifting in mediocrity. If you want to see my work, look at the moments people surrender their convictions just to avoid standing alone. This revelation led me to a new line of questioning. If your power lies in the hidden, what happens when people bring awareness to their habits and fears? What happens when they start questioning, doubting, refusing to drift? The devil's tone changed, losing some of its swagger. That is where my grip weakens. Awareness is the one force I cannot fully control. The moment a person begins to see their own patterns, to shine a light on their unconscious choices, the spell is broken. They may still feel fear, but they no longer let it drive. He warned, however, that awareness is fragile. The old world is noisy. The minute people stop paying attention, I slip back in through routine, distraction, fatigue. That is why daily reflection, questioning, and intentional living are so dangerous to me. They are habits of non-drifters. We talked at length about the role of environment. The devil explained that he thrives in spaces where growth is discouraged, workplaces that reward loyalty over creativity, families that prioritize peace over honesty, cultures that punish dissent. If you want to give me power, surround yourself with people who settle, who gossip, who resent ambition. My voice is loudest where challenge is rare and comfort is king. At this point, I asked what could be done to break free from drifting. The devil grudgingly admitted that it is possible, but never easy. It takes vigilance. It takes courage to be misunderstood, to question everything, to risk failure and criticism. Most will not choose this, because the pull of acceptance is stronger than the call to growth. Still, he conceded, once a person commits to self-mastery, my influence wanes. A non-drifter is my greatest frustration. I do everything I can to lure them back, but their awareness acts as a shield. This strange interview had already revealed more than I expected. It was clear that the devil's influence was everywhere, but also that its power was, at least in part, an illusion sustained by our own lack of attention, our willingness to settle, our reluctance to choose. As I prepared to ask my next round of questions, I felt a new sense of hope. If the devil could be questioned, he could be resisted. If his methods could be exposed, they could be outwitted. What would happen if more people dared to interrogate the source of their fears, their routines, their compromises? What might be possible if awareness became the habit, not the exception? The conversation grew more intense as I resolved to unmask every layer of the devil's operation. Let's talk about drifting in practice, I demanded. What does it look like in daily life? How can a person recognize when they've fallen under your spell? The devil answered with the confidence of a master manipulator. Drifting is rarely dramatic, he said. It is the slow decay of purpose, the fading of curiosity, the gentle slide from intention into habit. A drifter is not someone lost in wild rebellion, but one lost in routine. Their days are filled, yet rarely lived. They tell themselves stories, I'll change tomorrow, it's not so bad, at least I'm not failing. These mantras become manacles. He painted a picture I could not ignore. The drifter wakes up to an alarm set by someone else, heads to a job they chose for safety, not passion, and fills their evenings with numbing entertainment rather than meaningful pursuit. Even success, the devil claimed, can be a trap. If it comes without self-examination, it can make people arrogant in their mediocrity. They believe their achievements prove freedom, when in fact they're slaves to expectations and approval. I asked how drifting creeps in. He was delighted to describe the process. It often begins with minor compromises, say skipped goal, a small lie, a decision made to avoid discomfort. Over time, these small choices form a rut so deep it feels like destiny. By then, the individual may have forgotten their own dreams. traded them for comfort, approval, or the path of least resistance. The devil insisted that drifting is contagious. It spreads through families, workplaces, even entire societies. One person's reluctance to question infects another. Before long, conformity becomes culture. People stop asking why and start asking, how do I fit in? This is my masterpiece, The World of the Sleepwalker, where fear of rocking the boat outweighs the desire to steer it. Challenging him, I asked, is it ever possible for a drifter to awaken, to reclaim their purpose? The devil hesitated before admitting, yes, but it usually requires a shock, a loss, a betrayal, a crisis that shakes the foundation. Sometimes a rare act of courage, a chance encounter, or an honest conversation can spark an awakening. But most cling to the familiar, even when it hurts, rather than risk the unknown. I pressed for practical signs. What are the warning lights on the dashboard of the drifting life? He listed them with relish. Chronic boredom, procrastination, resentment toward others' success, defensiveness when questioned, a habit of blaming circumstances, and a constant hunger for distraction. These are my fingerprints. We delved into the ways technology and modern life amplify drifting. The devil was quick to boast of how information overload, endless entertainment, and the pressure to appear perfect all serve his cause. The more distracted a mind, the easier it is to lead astray. Noise is my ally, stillness is my enemy. Yet he confessed to having one great adversary. The moment a person begins to notice, to question, to turn off the noise and listen inwardly, the spell weakens. Drifting depends on inattention. Attention is the light that breaks it. We circled back to the purpose of our interview. If drifting is your art, then my mission is to expose it, to give listeners the tools to recognize it, resist it, and replace it with conscious living. The devil only smiled. Do your best, he said, but remember, most will choose the comfort of the old world over the uncertainty of waking up. That, more than anything, is my advantage. I felt the weight of his words, but also a spark of defiance. If most would drift, that only made it more important to reach those ready to wake. As our strange interview continued, it was clear. Every moment of awareness, every act of intention was not just resistance, it was victory. The further we ventured into this strange interview, the more the devil's methods took on a frightening familiarity. I challenged him to explain why, if drifting is so widespread, it isn't more often recognized or resisted. His answer was simple, even smug, because I use comfort as a disguise. People don't see chains if the cuffs are lined with velvet. Most will endure boredom, mediocrity, even quiet misery, as long as they can avoid pain or disruption. The modern world is my masterpiece, and ever before have so many been so easily lulled by comfort, noise, and false urgency. He detailed how the culture of busyness is his greatest camouflage. I fill people's days with obligations, meetings, notifications, endless lists until there's no time left to reflect, to wonder, to choose. The illusion of productivity keeps them from noticing they're drifting, not living. The devil was particularly proud of how easily people become addicted to the comfort of distraction. A person scrolling endlessly, binge-watching, or chasing small dopamine hits is a person I can keep on a leash for life. Their minds are full, but never free. But there was another, even darker revelation. The devil claimed he can manipulate not just individuals, but entire institutions. Give me a school system that rewards memorization over critical thinking, a workplace that prizes obedience over initiative, a media that feeds on outrage instead of wisdom, and I can guarantee generations of drifters. I don't need to control the powerful. I just need to keep the masses numb. Pressed for specifics, he explained how habits are his main stronghold. Show me a man's daily routine, and I'll show you who runs his life. Habits form quietly, through repetition. Before long, people confuse habit for identity, routine for destiny. By the time they notice, their willpower has grown weak from disuse. But, I countered, if your power lies in habit, then surely habit can be turned against you. Can a person not build habits that resist your influence? The devil grew serious. Yes, but it takes conscious effort, deliberate, repeated choices. The habits of a non-drifter are not formed by accident. They are crafted, one uncomfortable decision at a time, until they become second nature. Most are unwilling to endure the discomfort long enough to break free. That is my shield, the average person's desire for ease, their fear of standing apart. I asked if there was hope for those already deeply enmeshed in drifting. The devil conceded that change is always possible, but rarely easy. The first step is honest self-reflection, willingness to see without excuse, where you have chosen comfort over purpose. Most will resist this with every rationalization they can muster. It is painful to admit you have been your own jailer. He admitted, almost with a note of respect, that sometimes a crisis or loss can jolt people awake. A job lost, a relationship ended, a brush with mortality. These can snap a person out of drifting. But awakening through pain is not the only path. Sometimes it is simply a matter of asking a new question, daring to imagine a different life, and then acting before fear regains control. Our conversation turned to the weapons available to the non-drifter. The devil acknowledged several: daily rituals of reflection, communities that prize growth over conformity, the courage to risk ridicule, and the discipline to act despite fear. Every act of intentional living is an act of rebellion against me. The more often it is repeated, the weaker my grip becomes. As the interview pressed on, I felt a growing sense of responsibility. The devil's candor was chilling but also clarifying. His power, vast as it is, rests mostly on unawareness, avoidance, and the small, repeated choices that make up a life. I left that round of questioning with a simple but urgent realization. The line between drifting and freedom is not drawn by fate, but by the daily decision to wake up, question, and choose. With every answer, the devil's playbook became clearer and more personal. I could see the fingerprints of his influence everywhere, not just in the big failures or public scandals, but in the quiet compromises of everyday life. I pressed him further. If awareness is your enemy, what specifically can a person do to break free from your influence, to stop drifting and reclaim their power? The devil's reply was both revealing and challenging. The first step is always awareness, a willingness to see the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. Most people avoid self-examination because it means facing hard realities, missed opportunities, years wasted, dreams abandoned. But the very act of honest reflection begins to loosen my hold. He spoke of the power of questions. Ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? Who benefits from my choices? Do my habits serve me, or do I serve them? Am I drifting through my days, or directing them? These questions, he said, act like keys, unlocking doors that have been closed by years of routine and unconscious obedience. He admitted that breaking free requires not just questioning, but action specifically, the discipline to build new habits. Drifting is the result of unconscious repetition. The antidote is conscious creation. Every small act of intention, a new morning ritual, a moment of stillness before reacting, a decision to speak rather than remain silent weakens my influence. I challenged him on the difficulty of change. People want to believe in transformation, but most struggle to sustain it. Why is lasting change so rare? The devil grinned. Because real change is uncomfortable. It disrupts relationships, challenges identity, threatens the status quo. The world conspires to keep people drifting because it fears the chaos of too many awake minds. Most will choose discomfort they know over the discomfort of growth. He explained that success in breaking free is often incremental. Do not wait for dramatic breakthroughs. Change is built on small, consistent victories. Every time you choose awareness over autopilot, purpose over comfort, you move further from my reach. Our conversation shifted to the importance of community. The devil admitted that people are more likely to awaken when surrounded by others who encourage growth. Isolation is my ally. When people share their goals, seek honest feedback, or simply spend time with those who value authenticity, my grip weakens. The best antidote to drifting is a tribe that prizes questions over answers and growth over conformity. I asked about setbacks. What happens when someone falters, when old habits return, or discouragement sets in? The devil answered, I thrive on shame and guilt. If a person believes that failure means starting over, they become easy prey. But those who see setbacks as lessons rather than verdicts recover quickly. The non-drifter is not one who never fails, but one who refuses to let failure become a final answer. He described, almost with reluctance, how humility and self-compassion are the keys to persistence. Arrogance, thinking you're above drifting, makes you blind to your own patterns. But humility keeps you open, and compassion keeps you going. Those who forgive themselves learn fastest. Those who judge themselves harshly are mine for the taking. We explored the final layers of resistance, time, patience, and the ongoing nature of growth. The devil warned that the urge to arrive, to rest on past progress, is one of his oldest tricks. The journey never ends. As long as you remain curious, as long as you keep asking, changing, building, I can never claim you for good. I left this stage of the interview both unsettled and empowered. The devil's reign was real, but so was the possibility of freedom. An honest question, one conscious act, one new habit at a time. Ready to dig deeper? The more the devil revealed, the clearer it became that his power is built on inertia, the countless moments when a person chooses not to choose, when days blend into years, and intention gives way to habit. I pressed him to admit, if all your influence depends on drifting, then surely a person who lives with purpose can slip your grasp entirely. The devil's answer was laced with both irritation and reluctant respect. It is true purpose is my greatest adversary. A man or woman who knows what they want and who pursues it daily is nearly immune to my methods. Such people are few, but they are the ones who shape history, inspire others, and live lives that cannot be reduced to mere existence. I wanted specifics. What do these people do differently? How do they withstand the tides of conformity and comfort? The devil explained that non-drifters are deliberate in all things. They set intentions each morning, review their progress each night, and are ruthless in identifying the habits that lead them off course. They do not wait for motivation. They act out of principle, not mood. Their sense of purpose acts as a compass, guiding decisions both large and small. These individuals, the devil conceded, often face resistance. The world prefers drifters. A non-drifter is a mirror showing others what is possible, but also reminding them of what they've neglected. That is why purposeful people are often misunderstood, envied, even resented. But their resilience is fueled not by applause, but by conviction. He described the arsenal of the non-drifter, a willingness to question, to fail, to stand alone if necessary, the humility to learn from mistakes, and the discipline to persist when results are slow. They are not perfect, he admitted, but they refuse to let imperfection become an excuse. They build their new world one choice at a time, and the habit of conscious living becomes their greatest shield. Our discussion turned to the environments that nurture such people. The devil grumbled about the rarity of communities that support growth. Most groups, by design or inertia, encourage conformity. Don't ask too many questions. Don't make others uncomfortable. Don't stand out. But every now and then, you find a gathering, whether in a family, a company, or a circle of friends where truth is valued above comfort. In such places, I find little to do. He was quick to remind me, however, that the temptation to drift never fully disappears. The moment a non-drifter grows complacent, stops questioning, or lets routine dull their awareness, I begin to reclaim ground. The battle is never won once and for all. It is waged in every moment of awareness, every decision, every day. I reflected on these truths and asked, what would happen if more people embraced this path? What if societies, not just individuals, valued purpose and self-mastery over comfort and compliance? The devil's reply was as much a challenge as a warning. You would see fewer drifters and more creators. Progress would accelerate, old limitations would fall away, and my work would become much harder. But remember, change starts with one. Most will wait for others to lead, but the real power belongs to the one who chooses first. As our interview approached its final turns, I understood that the devil's influence, for all its reach, was ultimately voluntary. His reign depends on consent given, often unconsciously, one small decision at a time. So, what is left is to choose, to drift or to live awake, to surrender or to build, to follow the world's script or to write your own. Are you ready to challenge the devil's final defenses? The conversation reached a critical point, and I was determined to leave no ambiguity in the devil's confessions. You have shown me your tactics: fear, comfort, habit, conformity, the seduction of the easy path. But what is your last defense? When someone knows your tricks, when they are awake and aware how, do you still try to pull them back? The devil's answer was as subtle as it was sinister: doubt. My last and greatest weapon is self-doubt. Even when a person has broken free from drifting, when they are living with intention and clarity, I plant seeds of uncertainty. Am I really worthy? Do I deserve happiness? What if I fail again? These doubts can make even the strongest hesitate, question their progress, or sabotage their own victories. He explained how self-doubt often masquerades as humility or realism. People convince themselves that playing small is virtuous, that their ambitions are selfish, that caution is wisdom. I whisper that their success is a fluke, their joy is temporary, and their progress will unravel the moment they stop striving. With enough repetition, these thoughts become internalized, and a person can drift even while appearing to move forward. I challenged him. But what of resilience? Surely people can learn to recognize and resist even this. The devil conceded that resilience is the antidote. Those who expect doubt who meet it with curiosity, not fear, turn it from a barrier into a bridge. They learn to question their doubts, to treat them as signals to reflect, not as commands to retreat. We explored the tools of resilience in depth. The devil listed them almost grudgingly: the practice of gratitude, which shifts focus from lack to abundance; the power of purpose, which sustains effort in the face of setbacks; the cultivation of supportive relationships, which provide perspective and encouragement; and, above all, the willingness to begin again after failure. He warned, however, that pride can be a trap. The moment a person believes they are beyond drifting, they grow vulnerable again. Arrogance blinds, but humility sees. The greatest protectors against my influence are those who admit their weaknesses, who remain students no matter how much they achieve. I pressed further. What about society at large? How do your methods scale to entire cultures? The devil boasted that mass media, education, and public discourse all become channels for his influence when left unchecked. Broadcast enough fear, enough division, enough noise, and even the most purposeful individuals find it harder to stay centered. Social pressure rewards compliance and punishes dissent, keeping the herd in line. Yet, he admitted, true change always starts small. One person, awake and persistent, can spark others. A single act of courage, a public question, an honest story, these can ripple outward, weakening my grip on families, organizations, even nations. I ended this round by asking the devil for his greatest regret. He paused, then replied, "My regret is that my work is never done. No matter how many drift, there are always a few who wake up. They remind others, and the process begins again. I win many battles, but never the war." As the interview neared its end, the devil's final warnings and admissions revealed the real lesson. Freedom is not an accident, nor a gift; it is a discipline. The enemy is rarely outside us, but within, not a monster, but a whisper. What remains, then, is your choice. Will you accept doubt as a reason to stop, or as a signal to go deeper? Will you allow the old patterns to reclaim you, or will you persist in the discipline of awakening? The final moments of this strange interview awaited, poised to deliver either the last temptation or the ultimate liberation. As we neared the end of the interview, I sensed the devil's patience thinning. I pressed one last time. If everything comes down to daily choices, if your power is built on my inattention, why then do so many remain trapped? What is it about your last defenses that keep people returning to the old patterns even after they've tasted freedom? The devil's reply was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Because comfort, even laced with misery, is familiar. Most people would rather be unhappy in the known than risk uncertainty in the unknown. My power is sustained by the myths people tell themselves. I'll change when I'm ready. Tomorrow will be different. It's too late for me. These thoughts are more effective than any punishment or threat. He explained that the final temptation is always rationalization. People believe their own excuses. They dress up fear as responsibility, indecision as wisdom, and stagnation as maturity. The longer someone drifts, the harder it becomes to remember the spark that once drove them. The voice of habit grows louder than the voice of hope. I challenged him. What about love? What about those moments of inspiration, when people help each other, support each other's dreams? The devil sneered. Even love can be twisted to my purposes if it becomes a source of guilt, duty, or dependency. But true love, unselfish, courageous, and supportive, shakes my hold. It reminds people of their potential, reawakens purpose, and gives them strength to challenge my authority. We spoke about legacy. What do you fear most? I demanded. The devil confessed. I fear the day when enough people wake up not all at once, but one after another. My influence fades every time someone dares to step outside their comfort, challenge their fears, and act from intention rather than habit. I fear every honest conversation, every act of forgiveness, every morning someone chooses to begin again. He warned, however, that the old world never stops calling. No matter how far you go, comfort will tempt you, fatigue will whisper that you've done enough, doubt will return. My work is never finished, because your work is never finished. As long as you remain awake, I am powerless, but the moment you drift, I am waiting. As the devil's admissions echoed in my mind, I was struck by the realization that the most powerful weapon against drifting is not willpower or intelligence, but willingness. The willingness to notice, to question, to begin again, to seek help, to let go of perfection in favor of progress. I ended by asking, if you had one message for those who would resist you, what would it be? The devil answered, his voice equal parts warning and invitation. Stay awake. Comfort is seductive, but growth is always found beyond it. You do not need to be perfect, only persistent. Choose every day, even when you fail, to live by design, not by drift. In the end, the world you inhabit will reflect the choices you make. With the interview's climax approaching, the final barrier to freedom was not fear or the devil, but the willingness to act. The power to outwit the devil, I realized, is always within reach, one conscious choice at a time. Ready for the closing confrontation? As our extraordinary interview drew to its close, the devil's bravado faltered, if only for a moment. He had confessed his methods, his weapons, his favorite hiding places. He had outlined the architecture of drifting, exposed the machinery of fear, and revealed the subtle ways comfort and doubt keep millions from ever waking up. Yet, in that final moment, what stood out most was not the devil's strength, but his dependence on human consent. I asked him directly, what would happen if people simply refused to surrender, if they chose to live with intention every day? The devil's voice dropped, his tone a shade more serious. Then my influence would shrink day by day, habit by habit. I cannot defeat those who persist in awareness, who keep questioning, who choose discomfort over drifting. My reign is strongest when people give me power by default, when they let days blur, let decisions make themselves, and let fear decide what is possible. In the silence that followed, I saw with clarity what this strange interview was truly about. The devil is not an omnipotent force, but an opportunistan echo that grows louder when left unchallenged, a shadow that deepens when the light of consciousness fades. His greatest weapon is neglect. His greatest enemy is participation. So, what then is the way out? The answer, I realized, is both simple and demanding. It is the decision, made again and again, to live awake. To notice the small moments when drifting calls, to turn away from the comfort of the old world, and to step sometimes trembling, sometimes boldly into the new. It is to treat every setback not as evidence of defeat, but as an invitation to recommit. To understand that victory is not a final destination, but a practice, a daily refusal to surrender to routine, rationalization, or regret. The devil warned me one last time not to underestimate the pull of comfort or the power of subtle habits. You may leave here resolved, he said, but the world will tempt you to forget. People will tell you to slow down, play small, be realistic. My work is not to defeat you in one grand battle, but to reclaim you with 1,000 tiny surrenders. But in that moment, I felt an unshakable conviction. No force on earth, not even the devil himself, can defeat a mind that chooses to question, a spirit that chooses to build, a person who, each day, chooses to try again. With the interview concluded, I stepped away with a renewed sense of possibility and responsibility. The devil's secrets were out not as a source of fear, but as a call to action. And so I invite you, listener, to remember, every day is a new chance to outwit the devil. You do not need perfection, only the willingness to stay awake, to choose again, and to never surrender your authorship. This, in the end, is the ultimate freedom. The interview may be over, but your adventure is only beginning.